we made it. Even through this challenging time of this pandemic, we have not missed 1 month in doing the 12 powers given to us by the genius of Charles Fillmore. And I want to say that going through these powers and reading a lot from Fillmore's writings on these powers, that I believe with all my heart that if Charles Fillmore was today teaching these powers, that he would have a little different angle than he had, over 150 years ago or so. And that's the thing that I keep telling people in New Thought and Unity, and I've always said that if you read his writings, not the perception called unity, but the man, you will see that he had a very deep vision of growth and development and redefining ourselves based upon the changing of times that we live in. He understood that. And that's why New Thought needs to accept this idea of being progressive. And I'm not using that in a political form, but everything is progressive. And that's the thing about religion that turned me off very young, that I did not find it progressive. I did not find it re-identifying or identifying itself in the change of time. And I didn't want to know what people thousands of years ago saw God. I wanted to see what God was today, in my generation, in my time. And truly, that's what we need the most right now. What is the God of this time that we're experiencing? Right? So let our hearts be open to hear what the Spirit has to say. So the 12th one was a little bit of a challenge to me, but Spirit came through beautifully, and let's just see what we can do here. Life, I call this life is seeking a living. Charles Fillmore called it regenerative life. Regenerative life. It has to do with Judas, which was a challenge. You got to really dig deep to why he picked Judas, the one who betrayed Jesus, as the 12th power. And it got really heavy and deep in his book. And I'm not going to do all that with you because we'd be here all day trying to figure this out. The color is red. And the place on the body that this deals with is actually what we call the sacral part of the body, or actually our sexual organs, where we reproduce life. It's where physical life comes from, but where spiritual life incarnates. So we're going to look at it from both of those directions. So I'll begin with Charles Fillmore. It says, in the phenomenal world, life is the energy that propels all forms into action. Life in the body is like electricity in a motor. As the engineer directs and regulates the electricity in a motor, so the life in the body has its engineer. Life is not in itself intelligent. Life just is. It's a neutral thing. It's not good or bad. It's none of these things. It just is. We call it the presence. We call it the I am. We call it being. We call it substance. We call it spirit. All these are the same words. So because it's not in itself intelligent, it requires the directive power of an entity that knows where and how to apply its force in order to get the best results. The engineer of the life force in the body of man is the intention of consciousness. I hope that this gives you a little clearer and even deeper understanding of how we use this word so often, consciousness. Maybe it's thrown around way too much, that pretty soon words just become familiar and we use them. But the power of any word is not in learning the word, it's learning where the word came from. The essence, the understanding behind the word. So Fillmore came up with these 12 powers, and I think most of you are familiar with that. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but as I told you, I received this little pamphlet on these 12 powers by Charles Fillmore long before I heard Charles Fillmore or Unity at all. I was being an assistant minister in Peoria, Illinois, and Decatur, Illinois, and running back and forth. But I was searching, and I was open for something fresh, and this little pamphlet came into my hands, and I thought absolutely how genius that was to see that these 12 disciples, these 12 inner disciples, these disciplines, these powers that was in us, was not just Jesus calling out these people, but it was calling them out in himself, in ourself. I thought that was amazing. And so that was my first time that I opened the gate of my mind to see what might walk through. And of course, the rest has been history as I found unity. In many ways, unity found me at that time. And it's been a great relationship. Okay. How many of you had that happen to you? You people that came from Catholicism, Baptist, or whatever you came from, and probably thought you was going to carry on the family generative religion. Your life was mapped out, and all of a sudden something inside of you said, stop and lay down your nets. I got something for you. Your life is about to change. And then something like this pamphlet comes in your way, or you meet somebody that is a new thought and they invite you, or you read a daily word, or something shows up in many different forms that awakens in you what you didn't even know you had, because you thought all your power was out there. But you didn't know you carried all the power you needed to get you into the level of consciousness that would become your destiny and their path toward enlightenment. Fillmore says that life is divine, spiritual, and it's the source that we call God. The river of life, and this is why I sang the songs that I did to start out about rivers today, healing streams, and out of your innermost being shall flow rivers of water, because of this statement. The river of life is within all in their spiritual consciousness. They came into consciousness of the river of life through the quickening of the Spirit. What an interesting word. I'm always fascinated with this term, quickening. Quickening. So I want to talk about it a little bit. But let me read this again. That people come into this spiritual consciousness, this spiritual flow. See, your life should be a flow. It shouldn't be a bunch of events that are not connected. But spirit is what connects the dots of your life. And if we just move from this piece to that piece without understanding what links each piece that we add to our life, then we're not flowing in this thing called the river of life, or life, spirit itself. The word quickening means to quicken something is to bring it to life or restore it to a former flourishing condition. Isn't that great? Quickening is something that is brought to life or restored. How many things have we forgotten as a created being? We've given way too much power to our formed being from our created being, till the created being has become the lesser as we've transferred that power over who we think we are as physical bodies and all the labels that go with it. Our power to be a political identity, to be a religious identity, to be gender identity. Whatever your identities that make you you in this world takes power. They are the gas in the engine. They are the electrical system that moves you through this world. And this is saying there is a much better, more intelligent consciousness to drive your spiritual as well as it manifesting into the physical. Quickening, again, means to bring something and restore it. In the scripture, which is one of my favorite places that it is mentioned, says that the same Spirit that raised Christ, that raised Jesus actually. Christ didn't need to be raised. Unless you're confusing Christ with the body. No. Christ didn't need to be raised. The body, called Jesus, needed to be raised to the Christ in himself. Resurrection. The raising of the vibration of the outer man to be aligned with the vibration of the inner man. When you can say, I am that I am. See, there's a difference saying the I am. And by the way, I'm just going to throw in something here. It's interesting. Beware when people say I am or I'm. Just I apostrophe M. I'm. That is not the I am. The I am is very clear to speak. When the Spirit speaks of its being, it will say I am, not I'm. I'm coming over today. Especially in the South. We're kind of lazy. I'm coming over. No, bring the I am with you. The essence, the spiritual being that you are. And this is the life that we're talking about today. The power of life is the state of being. So it says that that same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead, it shall also quicken your mortal body. Now, you that are not listening to the Wednesday class, I really think you're missing something that's going on here on Wednesday. Especially last Wednesday. It was deep, it was heavy, but it was channeled totally. Please. Thank God some are coming on Wednesday now. But if you can't listen to these series that is going on right now, this is channel material. But one thing we were talking about was prenatal and what it's like to be formed in the womb. And one of the things that I read in this material that I'm using is that there is a quickening that happens in every 20 weeks. At 20 weeks of utero, there's something that happens called a quickening. And that is when the first connection with what is being formed is connected to what is created and is coming in for its incarnation into that body. A quickening. But the fact that we've been told that we can be born again, don't throw that one out. You know, when I say that, you're going to think about some fundamentalist neighbor that's trying to get you saved. And no. There's nothing wrong with being born again. And again. Or however long it takes. But I'm not even talking about reincarnation here. I'm talking about the fact that you can be totally rebirthed as a different human, as a different physiology, as a different biology. You can be reborn at the cellular level into a much higher vibrating physical body that is going to be much closer to your created spiritual body. See, the old healing idea is to heal you and keep you where you are. That's the ego's version of taking truth and putting its venom of its own agenda into things. Stay where you are, and I'll give you what you're looking for. Because the thing is what you're seeking for, if you stay where you are, you're not going to reach the vibration to match what you're trying to get. So you can pray for healing till the cows come home. But if you're not at the vibration to receive healing, which healing is not fixing you up because you're broken, but healing is the true whole you that was created in the vibration to match your physical body, that they become one. That's what healing is. It's the natural state, not supernatural state whatsoever. John 10:10, one of my favorite, is the teacher himself who comes and talking to people around him who are only existing day by day. most people who identify a lot with their outer self, with their human self, end up surviving. It's all about the survival of the species. Having a job enough to put a roof over your head, a car to drive, groceries to eat. I mean, people feel that's almost successful now if you can reach that level. If I can just have enough. We've settled for too long, just enough. These were people who were living beings. Now hear me. Anything that lives will die. Anything that lives will die. But life does not die. Life is another synonym for God. Just like love is. And all these attributes that we talk about, all these divine attributes, is God. Not something God has based upon some reward and punishment system. Or if you pray hard enough, or if you beg me enough, or if you're morally good enough, then I'll consider giving it to you. And even then, it's a consideration. That's not what we serve here. That is not what we vision. So Jesus was around all these people who were not living in the abundant flow of the life that God is. And this is what he said to them. Well, I've come to show you something better. I've come that you may have life and have it more abundantly, to the overflow life. He came to give to the living life. To take them out of the frequency of surviving, just living. This is where sometimes things that have served us so well at some point do not serve us as well because we grow. Things that we need at a certain stage is not necessarily needed at another stage of growth and consciousness. And what I'm thinking about right now is the beautiful truth of reincarnation. For most of us, I don't know individually what you all think about that. But if you're a person that embraces that idea, and I do at a certain level, and I don't at another level. See, this is what's confusing everybody, is the world is no more black and white, this and that, truth and false. There's so many dimensions. I like the way A Course in Miracles handles it. It says that, yes, they accept that in the ego's world that there is reincarnation, but not in God's true world. There is no need for reincarnation if you are living in the essence of your creation. Creation does not need to keep coming back to grow. It was attained its fullness at the moment of creation. I like that. But it makes me sound like you don't know what you believe. And you know what? The ego part of me doesn't know what to believe. And I'm glad that it's not so strong in its beliefs any longer. I want to be there. People ask me something sometime and I can meet them at a certain level and I'll say, yes, I do agree with that. And then all of a sudden I shift to another frequency and I go, but... So we're becoming multidimensional in our consciousness. So Jesus is saying to only those people who are surviving and waiting to go to a better place, to go to their heaven, to go to paradise, to go wherever they're going, and not realizing that what they seek for is here now, in this moment. Matthew 7:14 says, because narrow is the gate and narrow is the way that leads to life, few there be shall find it. That's an interesting scripture. Man, was that one of those scriptures they beat us over the head when I was growing up. What they were trying to say is, if you're moral enough, if you're good enough, whatever, you're going to get through the gate, and the rest of you is going to go to the other place. Let me show you what I found on this. Let's look at the word narrow. It's from the Greek word. It's from Latin, but it's a Greek word, histemi, meaning from obstacles standing close about in the way. And I thought, it's not narrow in itself. It's been made narrow by obstacles standing in the way. And I thought, well, what's the obstacles? And I found that in Matthew 23 and 13. Listen to this. How terrible for you teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces, but you yourselves don't enter in, nor do you allow those who are trying to enter. It was the religious people of Jesus' time that was standing in the door, not letting the people they were teaching to move in, and themselves had become obstacles standing in the way of people moving toward life. The word life is Zoe. I love that name. Z-O-E, Zoe. Means life, vitality. How many get what I just said to you? I remember going to my minister, who was my own aunt, because I had questions. But if I had questions that was beyond the doctrine of that religion and that church, and they didn't have an answer, this is what I got. I got, one, you shouldn't be asking such questions. Secondly, you can ask Jesus when you get to heaven. Thirdly, you need to die to get answers, and you'll understand it all better by and by. That's the answers I got. And something rose up in me and said, I want to know now. If I'm going to give my life to this, if I'm going to dedicate myself toward this idea of a God and Jesus and all of that, I want to know what I'm doing. I want to get it for myself, and I want it now. Because life was driving me as the fuel of my soul and the engine of my thinking. I don't know what time it is because that clock says 9 o'clock. Okay, I'm not going to get through. We may continue this next Sunday. But do you get that? Because narrow is the gate and narrow is the way which leads to life, few shall find it. Do you realize in the scheme of religion, of Christianity, which is over 1 billion people in Catholicism and Western Christianity, we seem as a drop in the bucket. I mean, look at this. We get 50, 60 people, we all get excited. Then you go down to Elevation, and they're packing them in by the thousands. Why? Because narrow is the way for them who stand in the door and will not let them move into the deeper spiritual things of God, where you just kind of squeeze by and say, out of my way. Excuse me. And some of us had to do that with family, friends, the religion we were raised in, the ministers, everybody was trying to tell us we're getting into false doctrine, we're getting into the devil's stuff. All these kind of things was coming, but something in you just said, get out of my way. You will not stand in this gate or portal, but I'm going through because I'm going to reach life. John 1:4 says, for in him was life, and that life is the light of humanity. People, we're not talking about just living to make it. And some people make it better than other people make it, but we're all just making it. Even your body, sitting in these chairs, is all sitting in that chair because of something called the autonomic system. Digestion, your breakfast. Blood circulating, heart beating. It's just something to keep you alive. But I say to you that sitting in these chairs and you're just alive, I come that I might bring to you life and more abundant. I will not stand in the door in your way, but I'm stepping aside. Philippians 2:16. These are also good. Holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the day of Christ. What does that mean, the day of Christ? That meant the day that you knew that Christ wasn't Jesus' last name. Remember that day? When you went, whoa, that's not his last name. That's who he was, the Christ of God, manifested 2,000 years ago in a teacher that would open a door and a portal for us to also do the works that he did and even greater, and to join this great Christ ecclesia community in the world. Proverbs 18:21 I like. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it and indulge it will eat its fruit and bear the consequences. So you can have the consequence of life working for you, or you can have the consequence of death working for you. The pure life of God flows into mankind's consciousness through the spiritual body. And I've taught this to you through the time I've been here, that you have to realize that the spirit only receives the things of the spirit first. The natural man cannot receive the things of the spirit. They're foolishness to him. This is in the book, for what that's worth for you. It says, the spirit searcheth yea the deep things of God, for the things of the spirit of God are foolishness to the natural man. What you know today of spiritual principle, you did not get it through your intellect first. Maybe the knowledge came later because you sat in a workshop, or you heard a speaker, or you read somebody's book on it, and you go, oh, that's what it is. And they help to put it into an objective language for you to understand. And this, one of the most erroneous scriptures that's taken wrong to me, is that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. How many has ever heard that? You don't have to be a real Bible person to hear that. People's always using that. The body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. But I said, wait a minute. If my physical body cannot receive the things of the Spirit, then what body is receiving the things of the Spirit? And something said, your spiritual body receives the things of the Spirit, and then the spiritual body gives it to the mind, the thought. Intention is the directive. The life force is the directive. And it ends up at the molecular cellular level. So I guess what I'm saying there is be careful about the ego making you think that you are spiritually enlightened by just gathering knowledge out of a book or from David Holtz. No, all we're trying to do is open your book. I use the Bible to open your book. Life. He that believes in me, out of his or her belly, innermost being, shall flow rivers of living water. And I'll close with this. Since the sacral is the water sign that represents our reproductive, at that level, it is the birth of bodies. That's where the bodies come from. They come from the sacral place. Bodies are made from the sacral place through sexual encounter. And we call that reproduction of the species. Bodies are made from two other bodies. Now, what is happening is there is a raising up out of the sacral to the vibration of the heart. And as in the physical body, it is the womb that brings forth a physical body, so the heart is opened as the womb of life, which is raised from the womb of living. And we move therefore from reproduction to co-creative. As we move from procreation, we move to co-creation. So only those who have come to the consciousness of the spiritual body can actually feel this stream of life. What do I mean by that, co-creation? Procreation, we know how that goes. And I have many questions about that, and I did get into it Wednesday a little bit, about how people are misusing the gift to procreate bodies out of rhythm and sync to souls incarnating. And when you do that, you bring in a troubled soul that was not ready to come in. That's another story. If people would bring souls in and be conscious of it, you would see a whole different human experience. But what about getting with people and all of a sudden there's an exchange from the heart level? An idea is born. The higher word, the higher sperm of God rather than the sperm of man, the DNA of God connects to someone and you conceive their idea with your idea into a greater idea. That idea that the two of you have created from the heart is for the co-creation of the species, to raise our consciousness. And if this sounds new to you, it's not. It's happened in your life. This is where things like coming up with a new entrepreneurship, a new business. See, in the living state, we just repeat what other people did. We look at people who are successful and we think we're going to do what they did. We need to be doing things that nobody's done. You need to be thinking about things and ways to make your living from the realm of life. Why? And I close with my subject. Life is always seeking a living. God, whose life said, I seek a living in you. Not of survival, but of the abundance of all in who I am, flowing in you, through you, and as you into the world today. So let's honor the power of life. Maybe it's time, and most of us are past that point where we're probably going to be regenerating any more bodies. Yeah, now think about what I'm saying. Most of us in this group are at a place where most of us probably have our retirements and our social securities and whatever, and it's freed us up from having to go maybe to a regular job. I'm not saying everybody, but the majority of us here, I know, that we basically have been freed up from totally depending completely for our survival from the system. What are you going to do with that time? You can either go get on a rocking chair in your front porch and retire. But you know what? At 75, I've never felt more of the fire burning in my being to do and to bring forth the vision and whatever. I'm not ready to just sit back and just exist, but to flourish, to grow, to become more than I've ever been in the past. So please use this time to let Spirit come through with new ideas, then come together and co-create them together until they manifested. What you're seeing here and what we're enjoying now was the seed of an idea. When I walked onto this place and became serious about taking it, I took it with a vision. First vision I had was getting that road done. That was my first seed I planted. And they didn't even know it, but I was planting with these people who knew to be working on it that hadn't touched it for a few years and had shut down. I was co-creating with them. And then we had an idea. Tim had an idea. We had an idea. We started making babies. We made a baby. New windows, new babies, new roof, new babies. That's co-creating. And religion needs to stop producing just more Christians, but they need to take what they got and co-create them to a higher consciousness.